Celebrating 20 years of commercial-free news for the classroom, this is CNN Student News. This show is awesome. I'm Carl Azuz. You know how we look now, but over my shoulder you can see some sweet graphics from the 1980s. A look back is coming up after our top stories. Let's go. Okay, first up, a new charge against Najibullah Zazi, one of the suspects arrested in connection with a terrorism investigation. He has been indicted on a charge of conspiracy to use weapons of mass destruction. Zazi was arrested last weekend. This is all part of a Justice Department investigation into an alleged plot to set off explosives in the U.S. At a hearing yesterday, another suspect, Ahmad Afzali, who was arrested on charges of lying to authorities, was released on bail of $1.5 million, but his travel is being restricted. Meanwhile, the United Nations Security Council is looking to stop the spread of nuclear weapons. All 15 countries who are members of the group voted for a resolution that would tighten control on nuclear materials. The measure also supports the peaceful use of nuclear energy. The presidency of the Security Council rotates between the member nations, and this month the U.S. has it, which is why President Obama ran yesterday's meeting. After the UN summit, he and other world leaders headed to Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania for a gathering of the G20. That's a group of the world's leading economic powers, but they're not the only ones in town. Protesters have flocked to the city to take part in demonstrations. Yesterday, an unauthorized march turned violent as protesters clashed with police officers. As for the G20, the global economy has improved since the last time it got together. But as Ed Henry reports, there's still a lot of work to do.
When these 20 leaders last met, it was spring in London, and the global recession was still catching fire. But as President Obama wrapped up his first big moment on the international stage, he declared they were putting out the flames.
We finished a very productive summit that will be, I believe, a turning point in our pursuit of global economic recovery.
5 months later, there are signs the recession is coming to a close, but unemployment is still sky high, helping to fuel protesters already waiting for the leaders in Pittsburgh.
No peace, no job!
The president acknowledged to CNN's John King that unemployment may get worse in the next few months, which is why he will be pushing his counterparts to sign on to a specific pledge to make the global economy more balanced.
We can't go back to the era where the Chinese or the Germans or other countries just are selling everything to us. We're taking out a bunch of credit card debt or home equity loans, but we're not selling anything to them.
But getting the Chinese to sign on will be difficult, especially after Mr. Obama slapped a tariff on Chinese tires, which raised questions about whether leaders are reneging on free trade promises they made in London.
So is the United States going to be standing up and stopping the slippage, or is it going to be further pushing the world downward towards trade conflicts and possibly a downward spiral of new types of protectionism?
Another potential dispute, European leaders continue to push hard for a crackdown on bonuses paid to bankers. And while Mr. Obama last week reiterated his call for broader reform of Wall Street, his hand has been weakened by inaction in Washington.
The U.S. is really handicapped by the fact that its own reforms haven't gotten out of Congress. So while they can talk about these broad reforms, until the United States has really acted, it's hard for them to really set the course.
Catching you up on a couple other headlines, starting with the recovery process in Georgia following this week's deadly flooding. President Obama has issued a federal disaster declaration for 4 counties in the state. That'll free up money and aid to help with the relief efforts. Requests for federal aid in other counties are being reviewed. And Governor of Massachusetts has picked Paul Kirk, whom you see right here, to fill the U.S. Senate seat left empty by the death of Senator Ted Kennedy. He's only taking over the seat temporarily, though. A special election for a permanent replacement is set for January. Kirk has said he doesn't intend to take part in that process.
Time for the shout out. Which of these existed 20 years ago? If you think you know it, shout it out. Is it the World Wide Web, DVDs, MP3 players, or text messaging? You've got 3 seconds. Go. Trick question. None of these existed 20 years ago. That's your answer, and that's your shout out.
You know what did? this show. CNN Student News is celebrating its 20th anniversary today. The name has changed. The goal is the same, to bring you the world's top stories. Here's a look back at some of the biggest headlines from the past 2 decades.
Mr. Gorbachev, tear down this wall.
Walking strongly, step by step, further into freedom.
And as president, I can report to the nation, aggression is defeated, the war is over.
This has just now been ignited. Can we all get along? Can we get along?
The building rattled, the whole thing shook. We thought it was a massive bomb.
We had to really be there for each other. Nobody was there to tell us what to do.
Rwanda's soldiers are mainly Hutu, the Rwandan Patriotic Front.
The United States will not cease its efforts until the dying stops and the refugees have returned.
What a horrific scene.
And so with this service today, we stand together to say, let the healing begin.
The only other Democratic presidents to win 2 consecutive terms this century are Woodrow Wilson and Franklin Roosevelt. Bill Clinton's re-election puts the president in some very exclusive company.
The world's first clone of an adult animal.
Never before has one sheep been cloned from the single cell of another fully grown animal.
I want the American people to know today that I am still committed to do what's best for our country.
William Jefferson Clinton is impeached for high crimes and misdemeanors.
Once again, school becomes a place not of learning, but of violence.
Just moments ago, I spoke with George W. Bush and congratulated him on becoming the 43rd President of the United States.
I will not yield. I will not rest. I will not relent in waging this struggle for freedom and security for the American people.
WorldCom filed for bankruptcy protection amid a $4 billion scandal.
It's the largest bankruptcy case in United States history. The stock price began its free fall late last month.
American and coalition forces are in the early stages of military operations to disarm Iraq, to free its people, and to defend the world from grave danger.
Of the major earthquake of northwestern India, which has triggered killer tsunamis in at least 6 South Asian nations. The quake hit off the coast of Sumatra, reportedly killing scores of people.
This is not a test. This is the real deal. There's a major hurricane that is in the Gulf of Mexico. We are facing a storm that most of us have feared.
I'm not going to forget what I've seen. Last night, the government of North Korea proclaimed to the world that it had conducted a nuclear test. Such a claim itself constitutes a threat to international peace and security. Today, our nation grieves with those who have lost loved ones at Virginia Tech. We hold the victims in our hearts, we lift them up in our prayers, and we ask a loving God to comfort those who are suffering today.
I have a privilege given few Americans.
I accept your nomination
for President of the United States.
For presidency of the United States.
America elects its first African-American president.
Change has come to America.
I, Barack Hussein Obama, do solemnly swear.
Congratulations, Mr. President.
Know that America is a friend of each nation and every man, woman, and child who seeks a future of peace and dignity, and we are ready to lead once more.
Okay, we're not done yet. Some of our viewers wanted to get in on this celebration, so take it away, y'all.
Happy 20th anniversary, CNN Student News. From us at Broad Creek Middle School in Newport, North Carolina, to you in Atlanta, Georgia, at CNN Student News headquarters. Happy 20th birthday!
Nice job. Thank you, guys. They and all of you out there are the reason we do this show. So from all of us here at CNN Student News, thank you so much for an incredible 20 years. We're going to keep this thing going on Monday, so we will see you then.